the French version of happy hour, to ensure that I didn't have to find myself alone and sober in what used to be my marital apartment. A full social calendar and big smiles gave the impression that I was somewhat in control of the tornado that recently touched down in my life, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. I headed out in the early afternoon to meet my relatively new friend Tiffany at the Jeu de Paume Museum, a space dedicated to modern and postmodern media in the Jardin des Tuileries. Parisian by birth, Tiffany and I met during my years working at one of the Big Four advertising agencies in Paris. We were both experiencing intense transitions. Me from being married to newly single, and she was moving away from the advertising world to answer her true calling as a visual artist. But our methods of transitioning differed wildly. Tiffany had a purpose, plan, and goal, whereas I chose late nights, partying, and denial. I refused to face how my pain was suffocating me. After we wandered long enough through the morose photography exhibitions of Sabine Weiss and Joseph Sudek, we treated ourselves, with a bit of nudging on my part, to a bottle of rosé in the Jardin des Tuileries. As a good wannabe Parisian, I made sure to have the bottle on hand to enjoy after our day at the museum. That was simply what one did. It was a sunny Saturday, and I had no obligations. I was on a mission to profiter de la journée. We settled into the garden's iconic green chairs side by side, people watching and sipping our wine, cackling with laughter, giving my spirit brief respite from my divorce, my shame, my feelings of worthlessness. Eventually, we hopped on the metro heading north. The destination was Sunset, a New York-style cocktail bar in the Montmartre neighborhood of Jules Joffrin. Walking up the stairs out of the metro station, using our hands to shield our eyes from the still-beaming late-afternoon sun, I noticed a concerned expression on Tiffany's face. "Is everything okay?" I asked. Looking at me for confirmation, she responded, "We're only going to have one bottle, right?" I smiled, threw an arm around her shoulders. "Yes, one. I promise." At sunset, we were promptly seated in an ideal people-watching spot, en terrasse. Unlike the typical Parisian rattan bistro chairs that line so many sidewalks, the seating at sunset was a mix of long wooden tables and benches that forced you to sit next to strangers, where you couldn't help but eavesdrop on their conversations. My status as a regular meant that I was treated like a local celebrity, and the staff knew what I liked. "And for you ladies," the young, wiry Senegalese waiter said, presenting us with a cold bottle of Côte de Provence rosé, the condensation dripping off its sides as soon as we sat down. Unbeknownst to Tiffany, the wine fest was about to begin. A few hours and several empty bottles of wine later, most of which I drank, I was looking around to get the waiter's attention to order another. "The last one," I said to Tiffany, but we both knew that was another empty promise. My eyes met the waiter's, but before I could give him the universal signal for another round, Tiffany yawned. Stretching out both her arms to their full length, she slurred, "J'en peux plus." She'd had enough, and I knew that her saying it in French meant that there was no convincing her to stay. The language of our friendship was English, so her switch to French signaled that she was too intoxicated to put any further effort into speaking my mother tongue. "I can't anymore," she repeated in English to make sure that I understood that there would, in fact, not be one last bottle. "I have to go home," she said while gathering her belongings. I had just caught my second wind and didn't want to leave. The abundance of wine temporarily relieved the heaviness of my new reality. I wanted to bathe in it, stay forever, but I followed suit. We drunkenly kissed each other on the cheek and parted ways, beginning my crooked 5-minute walk back home. The cobbled street that led from Sunset to my apartment bustled during the day.